Not that I do clay models, but I like to see clay models out of class.
Okay, so if you want to do a clay model rendering, you'll type sun into Rhino. That'll bring on this. Make sure to turn it on and change your viewport to rendered. Right now it's working in shaded where you just have the color of the layer. So I'll turn rendered on. You can see that the sun is set looks like it's fairly late in the day. So what's cool is that you can actually probably find a decent location. So I'll scroll down to here and see if there's, I don't know if it's gonna have Fayetteville. What would be the next closest place? That would probably be. What? Let's try it. Yeah, there we go. So we can make that our actual setting or location. We can then change the month, the time of the day. So change it however it's going to best fit your project. So it starts to give a little preview, like, don't worry, this isn't what the actual rendering is going to look like, where it's all pixelated. But you can start to see that this shadow is showing the stairway, which is good, as well as the profile. So I'll turn that on. And then a good thing to do is go to viewport or to properties. Rhino render settings, make sure that that's a high quality. So this goes back to, you have to know how big of a drawing this is going to be. If it's going to be an 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 17 or 24 by 36, whatever that dimension is, multiply it by 300 and that'll give you your resolution setting. That's going to make sure that it's a high quality one. I'm not going to do it too high. And then I'll set my DPI to 3. Maybe I'll do 200 just so. Maybe I'll just do 200 so it doesn't take forever. And you can always change the quality too with this setting to change it to high. Let's do at least normal. Hit OK. Then I go up to render. So you can see it's a little still kind of grungy with some of those settings. So it's really, the shadows are really dark. They're almost covering those objects. So you can change that by going to render properties. And you can actually add some ambient light to it so that the shadows aren't too dark. So you don't have to do too much for it to kind of reduce the harshness of those shadows. So I'm still going to keep it fairly dark. Hit OK. Now we'll render this out again. Now you can see that the shadows start to get a little bit lighter. If you also wanted to have more of a diffuse shadow, which is good for like diagrams, so you don't maybe not necessarily want there to be that hard line shadow, but you want there to be a shadow to show depth, go back to render properties render properties and choose skylight. So this is gonna create a light source that's gonna diffuse those shadows. So I'll hit OK. You can see that it's already kind of drastically changed the quality of that. However, I like this, even starting to merge the two shadow types. So this one actually still keeps those hard lines, but you can start to see how the shadow reads pretty cool. So now you can actually see the shadow from all those steps, the hard line from the wall, without actually losing those objects underneath it. Same with this profile. So this can be really cool that you render out something like this of a clay model, and then you render that, you save that image by going here, and then you do your make 2D to get the line work, and then you can overlay them in Illustrator to have both the line weight and the render quality. So
could you pan around into perspective view.
Uh-huh.
Show them the render again.
Yeah.
So this is just such a, I think this is awesome to be able to see how you can use this one 3D model to build your sections or perspectives, both the line work and also, like Bill was just saying, I can't stress enough how fast it is to be able to build a perspective. Adding Entourage in Photoshop, but if you start, from a perspective view like this, and then render it out with the shadows, and then render out or export also the Make 2D version to combine those things.
Yes, Ken?
Do I have control over your own vision?
Yes, you do. So that's perfect because that segues into this. So once you figure out your location, it's good to make sure that you're actually at the proper eye level. This helps kind of confirm that your design works with the scale that it's intended for. So if I stick within this properties panel, I'll zoom out and you'll see there's a camera position and a target position. So the camera position, you want that Z location to be obviously somewhere within that eye level. So around 5.5 to 6 feet. This is already pretty close at 6 feet. So I'll just hit 6. And then this also depends on whether the surface you're standing on is actually at exact 0, or if it's at a different elevation. So whatever this model is designed at, you add 6 feet. So if it's at 150 feet already up in the air, then you obviously change the Z location to 156 feet. So always just add that 5.5 to 6 feet Z location. You can then change where, if the person's looking up, down, straight across based off of the target, so Z target, it's looking pretty high up. It's looking up at 14.4 feet. So if I also change this to be 6, you'll see that now the horizon line is going to be perfectly set with the eye level. So you can even start to see how it starts to read more correctly. And the last thing is to actually change the viewport angle, or that eye line. So perspective, so right click on perspective, go to viewport properties, and you'll see that you have your camera lens length. So if you wanna change that, so if I change it to 35, we start to get a wider angle. If you change it to 75, it becomes much more narrower. So usually what's great, if you ever want to match this with a photograph, a lot of times if you look at the properties of that photograph, it'll tell you what that camera length is. And so you can just input that into your settings here, and it'll match almost identical. It's pretty beautiful in that sense. So.
Go 20.
Yes, I know, your favorite. There you go. So you can see how it really kind of increases the width. And something that's cool too is you can see that it's still maintaining your Z location and your Z target. If you want to move forward, you can simply, it looks like it's somewhat on the Y-axis, so I can just choose Z location and use and change it to be maybe closer to 60. Start to kind of move throughout the space. You could always even just place it if you know where you want that person to stand. You can say place, and it's going to look for something to snap to. So let's go back to that real quick. So I want to zoom in a little. Let's get a little closer. And like we did before, we can just simply go to render, start to render out this view. Let's get a little, it should. So it might have been clipping that a little. So if you go to render and choose safe frame settings, select it to be turned on. I don't know why it's not showing it. Oh, I probably have to turn. So render, show save frame. So this is essentially what that rendering output is going to be within. So that's why those stairs were being clipped. So you should go to render, save frame settings. And if you want the viewport of Rhino to be what the rendering output is, you have to make sure that you go up to rendering to Rhino render and change the resolution to be your viewport. Hit OK. So now you can see that save frame has expanded for the entire window of your Rhino space. Render it out. Wasn't that much larger, so it shouldn't take that long. So now you have a nice clay model where you can even start to see, like, even though this is just the default Rhino rendering, the shadow quality changes based off of the actual geometry, where you have the hard shadow along the curbs and the stairs, but then you even have this kind of more diffuse shadow where two shadowed objects are overlapping with each other. So it gives you a lot of range of depth with the shadow quality. Yeah. So we
combine that with the Make 2D lines,
mm-hmm.
right? So that you have the clay model with the Make 2D lines over it. Can make a really great base for perspective.
So yeah, I just ran that Make 2D command. We'll try and find it wherever I made it. I probably just screwed it all up. But probably didn't change the. If you don't change the layer name for that Make 2D command, so I kept it as axon section. If there's already objects on those axon section, the initial line work is going to prevent the new one from working. So always rename that. Any other questions?
Is there an easy way to kind of turn down the harshness or like the brightness kind of to get more?
Yeah. So yeah, so that all goes back to those lighting settings. So render properties. So I'll just bring this to be much more darker. Let's try it now. I'll just do a preview. Once you turn on the skylight, that is going to wash it out a little bit, but if you change that ambient light to be back to a darker, it'll make those shadows back to a more richer color.
Do you all have access to actual rendering software here? Is that part of your suite of software you can purchase, or it's available through the college in some way?
So it looks like with me on my computer, the student version.
That's just that building component.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask also, so do you have any pre-recorded videos? You said you've done these before, for just basic model building? I know I can see for some of us, but I say that, I think I know how to make orthogonal shapes. I don't know how to do model building.
Gotcha. Lind is a great resource. I have, if you just search my name on YouTube, I have a bunch of videos that are specific to some of my classes. I wouldn't say necessarily model building, but like right now I'm teaching a site grading class. So if you want to know how to do cool site grading and surface manipulation using Rhino, not to toot my own horn, but that's a great resource. That a lot of that uses Grasshopper too. So, but yeah, there's plenty of definitely good resources out there.
Lynda.com, I think, is the best way to learn. Just watching the first few chapters of that, and then Googling around if you have specific questions about how to do something that's more landscape architecture